Hello, welcome back. Thank you very much for joining this second in the series of videos that I'm recording for Field of Fitness, mirroring the sessions, the group sessions that I ran on the theme of training the mind back in May, June and July this year. The last video, if you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to please go and do so. It was on goal achievement. And today I'm going to be talking about health and well-being, which I know as a topic is important to the hearts and minds of John and Dan and many of the clients and people involved with Field of Fitness. I thought I'd start just by talking a little bit about what I do as a coach. So my role as a coach is to enable, to facilitate, and to encourage people to grow and to develop in the direction that they want to go in, overcome the challenges that come along. But ultimately, it's about moving forward. And what I would encourage you to do whilst you're watching these videos in the interest of moving forward is to think about what are the outcomes for me from joining this series that Andrew is running. What is it I want to get out of watching this? What's going to be helpful? And if for any reason it doesn't get covered in its entirety, or you've got any questions that you'd like to ask me, then feel free to contact me via the email or phone number that you've got that I'll show at the end of the slides that I'm going to share with you today. But very much coaching is about achieving goals. It's about creating a shift. It's about outcome thinking. So I'd certainly encourage you to think about what it is you want to get out of any particular video that you're watching. And in the spirit of creating a shift and a change, I'm going to talk about obviously health and well-being generally as a subject, but every topic I'm covering is in relation to growth, development. That's what coaching is centered on. But so with that theme in mind, I thought I'd start by sharing with you what are the key components in terms of, from the perspective of neuroscience, what are the key components that are required to facilitate and enable change? Just as a starting point, as a good positioner for the topic that we're going to continue to talk about, and actually in relation to a lot of the topics that I'm going to be covering over the coming months. I'm going to share, if my computer will allow me, I'm going to share my first slide with you. Which should be coming up any moment. Try again. Right, that didn't work. So I am going to give it another go. Hopefully this is going to work. There we go. Apologies for that. So here we go. From the first play from current slide. Okay. So what we know from studies of the brain, from studies of the mind, undertaken, the functioning of the brain undertaken by neuroscience, is that there are four key components that are required to be in the mix for there to be change, to facilitate change within us as human beings, for us to grow, for us to achieve things and move forward. The first one, which is a very important one, is raised awareness. So our raised awareness of a subject. Raised awareness in terms of self-awareness of ourselves. And I'm going to talk about self-awareness in a moment. Raised awareness of the learnings that we're taking from the situation. We raise awareness of what might be getting in the way, what's working, what's the best environment. So generally speaking, for us to move forward, there needs to be this component of awareness that's increasing, that's growing, that we're learning. And this is very important. And as I said, I should explain in a bit more detail in a moment. The other thing that we need to do to facilitate change is to have focused attention on what we're trying to achieve. Makes sense. We've got to be engaged. We have to be absorbed. And so actually spend time focusing on what we're trying to do. Makes sense. The other thing related to that is persistent practice. We need to practice what we're going to do. This, if you think about it, applies very much to exercise. If we're wanting to train for something, we're not going to achieve it unless we go to the gym or we fulfill our training regime and we practice what we're doing. And that applies exactly the same to things that are cognitive related. We need to be practicing what we're learning. We need to be practicing what we want to apply, and have it planned in and committed to that practice, to a schedule with self-awareness and reflection. And the fourth thing, and I'm going to dive into this in a bit more detail in a moment. The fourth thing is what we call what's known as a therapeutic relationship. So it's someone to whom we're accountable, whether that's a coach, whether that's a mentor, tutor, family member, someone we're just saying, look, I'm going to achieve this, and they're helping us to hold ourselves to account. Now, I'm obviously a big advocate of people working with coaches, because I know it works in the area of growth and movement forward for people to work with a coach. What I'm going to go on to say is that I think in some respects, if we don't have that facility, or we're choosing not to go down that route for whatever reason, having a mindset where we're thinking about being our own performance coach, how can I coach myself to move forward? What is the mindset I need to be my own performance coach? And I think, how does this all relate to health and well-being? Well, I'm going to explain in a moment. But what is healthy is to adopt and practice a learning mindset in all aspects of our life. Now, we all face challenges. We've all had difficult situations, and I'm sure many of you watching this will face difficult situations in your life, perhaps still are facing difficult situations in your life, or things haven't worked out how we want them to be. And the key thing is to look at what learning we can take from this. There's a saying that goes, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So whatever we are encompassing, whatever we are dealing with, whatever we're facing, think about it from the learning that we can take from it, even if it's not going well for us. Growth and learning, no matter in what size step, raise our self-awareness and raise our self-esteem. They raise our self-esteem by validating our personal accountability and achievement. So if we have a growth and learning mindset, and we are acknowledging that we're growing, we're learning on a particular subject, that ultimately supports our self-esteem. So being our own coach, having that mindset is good for our well-being. Working with a coach externally is good for our well-being. If we've got personal growth at the front of our mind, if we're personal growth orientated, we are ultimately increasing our own sense of involvement, our own personal control about the direction in which we're taking our lives. So the more we think about development, the more we think about how we can grow, the more we're taking control of that. And ultimately, one of the things that we know about stress, one of the main stress drivers is a sense of helplessness. It's a sense of, where do I go from here? How do I deal with this? So the more we have, the point I'm attempting to make here is, the more we have a growth mindset, a mindset of learning, a mindset of our own development, the more we are taking an element of control. And of course, there are things that beyond what we do that we can't control. However, the more we think about what we can control, the more we have a focus on that, the more we are giving ourselves a sense of personal control, and the greater that is to counter the stress that we face. And what we know about coaching is coaching directly fosters a growth in awareness, a growth in choice, a growth in responsibility. It's a known fact about coaching. And those are all key factors that lead to improvement in performance. So whatever area of our life we're wanting to perform, having a coaching mindset, working with a coach will help to foster that. And ultimately, every human activity, and this is something that comes from psychology, every human activity can be reduced to input, process, output. So we're trying to do something. There's a level of input there's a level of learning. We process what we've learned and then we apply it, and that's the output. And being very practical about it, at the level of performance, the quality of one's output will depend upon the quality of the input. And our own self-awareness is self-generated, high quality, relevant input. So I'm making this sound quite complicated, but it really isn't. If you think about anybody that you might be mentoring at work, yes, of course, their own commitment to the process, their own application is important. However, the level of information they're given, the way it's presented to them, the support that they get, the input that they're getting to then process that, and then for there to be an output, is going to be fundamental. And I would encourage you to think really seriously about this, because I know there's a lot of stuff out there about journals, and there are journals you can buy. There are ones that are particularly made for growth, and I'm a big fan of journaling, because journaling, when we get into, I don't know, therapeutic intervention. So anyone who's been to a counselor or psychotherapist, then they might be encouraged to use a journal. And a journal, in that essence, is how can we move on away from the challenging situation we might be facing. So it's about dealing with pain. It's about dealing with issues. Now, journaling isn't just about that. Journaling is about growth. So journaling is linked to learning, and the difference between a coach and someone who's a counselor is a coach is more about moving forward and achieving dreams, achieving our goals, and is dealing with issues. But the reason I'm talking about this is, don't allow the perspective of journaling being something about, well, it's to fix. Journaling is a fantastic thing to do. It's a great habit to take on, to actually acknowledge and note your own growth and development. And again, a positive thing to do to foster your own well-being, to keep you mentally healthy, to keep you growing. So I absolutely, as I mentioned at the end of this slide, make growth journaling a habit and your new passion, because that learning, that acknowledgement of your learning, the awareness of what you're doing is really important. So moving on, there are the 4 really important components related to mental health and well-being, and 3 of them are to do with our physiology, and are really important to our physiology, but by the same token also important to our mental strength and our cognitive ability. And this is going to be no surprise to you. Number 1 on my list is exercise. Exercise is really important, putting our bodies through, increasing our heart rate, fostering endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, really healthy neurotransmitters and hormones that help us to keep our mental state healthy. So that's really important. The other thing that's important for our mental health and well-being is nutrition. Part of how we feel at any given moment, part of how we're approaching a particular day, the mood that we might be in, is affected by what we eat. Eating healthily can counter mood swings. It can counter things like depression, anxiety, and ADHD. So having a healthy diet, eating the right things, eating well as it being very important to our physical health, is also very important to our mental health. So I'd absolutely encourage you to I'm sure this has been covered with the guys in the gym, but I'm just underlining it as being very, very important. And the third thing, and I think this is perhaps, it might be something we worry about after we've done a hard session, running, cycling, in the gym, but generally how much awareness we are of it can fluctuate, and that's hydration. There was a 2018 study that found that people who drank less water had a significantly higher risk of depression and anxiety than those that drank enough every day. Hydration is a key factor in our focus levels. We only need to be a small percentage dehydrated for our ability to focus and concentrate to reduce up to 30%. So hydration is really important to us cognitively, along with exercise and nutrition. And the fourth thing I wanted to talk about, I should say the fifth thing, because I've talked about being your own performance coach, haven't I? I think the fifth thing I want to talk about is meditation and having a moment to pause. There are countless studies, and there continues to be studies around the benefit of us being able to stop, being able to switch off, being able to go to a place where we can be calm, where we can be rested, where we can reconfigure and realign, is incredibly healthy. In a world where there are times where we can feel incredibly pressured, where work can be pressured, where life can be pressured, having a moment to stop and pause and meditate, and some time just to be, is incredibly healthy. And I'm just going to talk a little bit more about that with the next slide. So hopefully this one will come up a bit better than the first one. So meditation and the power of pause. What does meditation actually do for us cognitively? Well, the first thing is that it activates our parasympathetic nervous system, the PSNS. And what the PSNS does is it slows our heart and breathing rates. It lowers our blood pressure and promotes digestion. And by being activated, our body enters a state of relaxation. And this relaxation breeds recovery. So meditation does that, first of all. So it's encouraging us, it's enabling us to recover better. Now, I know there are studies that meditation, going into a very deep meditation, can be the same as a considerably greater number of hours of sleep in terms of restfulness. So it's an extraordinary way to recover. And another word that I think is very appropriate to meditation, another word beginning with R, is resourceful. If we're meditating and we're going into a calm place, regardless of how busy life may be, and we're approaching the situations that may be giving us stress from the position of being calmer, from having some time to go back to base and get ourselves into a calm and therefore resourceful state, we're much better equipped. I would challenge anyone to say that they could handle a situation with a heightened state of arousal, apart from if you're trying to fight somebody or run away from something, and deal with it resourcefully, unless we are calm, or as well as when we're calm. So motivation through activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So meditation through activating the parasympathetic nervous system is fundamental in enabling us to relax, recover, and actually deal with stuff that goes on in life. So by meditating, it also lowers our levels of stress and anxiety. The studies, again, have shown that people that meditate generally have lower levels of cortisol, lower levels reported anxiety and stress. Being mindful, being in the moment, having some time to pause and stop, increases and improves our focus and concentration. The actual cognitive process of, whether we call it meditation or whether we call it mindfulness, of being in the moment, removing the clutter from our brains and focusing on our breathing, or having some sort of visualization or some sort of mantra, puts us in the moment. So it's actually practicing in our mind the component of focusing, of concentrating, of being present, which I would argue to live a life, an enjoyable life, and one that is where we're not worrying about the future, reflecting on the past, getting caught up with things. To practice being in the moment is an incredibly healthy thing to do. It improves self-awareness and self-esteem. It does that by when we allow our conscious mind to switch off, where we switch off the thoughts that are going around, and we practice doing that. our ability subconsciously to reflect on things, to recall things, to wire, and our brains being responsive to the power of suggestion, the things that we might want to do, is much greater if we meditate. Meditation can support pain management. It fosters calmness, context, and compassion. They're three important C words, again, dealing with situations. If we're calm, if we understand the context, arguably, if we're compassionate to another person, if it's a situation that involves someone else, it can be a better way of us getting to a good outcome. And as I've already mentioned, it utilizes our full brain power by engaging our powerful subconscious. And trust me, there is a school of thought that our subconscious is actually the master of our mind. Ask anybody who has a phobia whether whether the subconscious is the master of our mind. It truly is. So the more we can engage with it, the more we can switch off our conscious brain and let what's going on underneath the surface to come to fruition and work for us, the greater we've got the chance of managing what's going on in our lives. So I shall stop sharing that slide. So meditation is really important, and there's a lovely quote by, in fact, I'm going to, excuse me for jumping back on it. I think rather than just read it to you, I shall show you it. There's a lovely quote by Albert Einstein, which I think, and something I quote quite a lot, I think encapsulates the benefit of having some quiet time, certainly from the point of view of problem solving, our capacity to deal with things, to be creative. And that is the quote being, I think 99 times and find nothing. I stop thinking, swim in silence, and the truth comes to me. I'm sure we're all familiar with that time where we've been trying to think of something, can't think of it, the moment we switch off, get in the car, drive, suddenly it comes to us, and that's the brain giving us a bit of a gift from our subconscious. So it's a powerful thing to be able to do. Okay, let's talk about some other, what I call, mind nutrients for positive health and well-being. This I greatly believe in. How we spend time, and there's a wonderful little parable that I'm going to read to you at the end of this. How we spend in our heads, how we spend time in our heads involves a choice and responsibility. Yes, it may be difficult. Yes, it may be difficult when we've got challenges going on. It may be difficult to focus on certain things. We can foster the environment by which to be able to focus through meditation, by ensuring we're hydrated, and by practicing, because none of this stuff, guys, comes from just thinking, right, I'm going to do it once and it's going to work. Just like going to the starting training with Field of Fitness, and we want to run a marathon that is going to happen overnight. So it involves persistence, but it also involves choice and responsibility. There's something that I encourage clients to do, and this relates to my mention of writing and keeping a journal, and that is to talk about sunshine moments, the moments in our day, the moments in our week that were great moments, the moments that we want to remember and focus on, and put those in the journal of things that happened that work well for us, whether it's a situation at work when we're under stress or we're questioning how we're doing in our jobs. Think about the things that worked and think about the sunshine moments. And that does involve a choice. It's not necessarily how we're naturally wired, but it doesn't mean that we can't do it. The sentinels, as I call them, of a positive mindset: gratitude, acceptance, compassion, altruism. There had been dedicated scientific study to show that all of those things foster happiness. All of those things foster positive mental health. I've mentioned it before in sessions. There were two fundamental studies of war veterans and an incidence of post-traumatic stress syndrome, and they found that in the war veterans that had a higher level of gratitude, there was a significantly lower level of PTSD. So gratitude and us thinking every day about what we're thankful for, thinking about what we've got, is fundamental to being happy, as is acceptance. There's a very simple exercise that you can do, which is around dealing with stress, dealing with everything that you've got on your mind, having a sort of brain download to think about what's troubling you and to think about what you can actually take control of. And it's a very simple exercise. You draw a circle. In the center of this circle, you write everything that's concerning you at this moment in time. Literally, if it's just a word that stands for it, you put it in this circle, everything that goes. So it's a circle of concern. Everything that's concerning you goes in that circle. When you finish doing that, you take as little or as long a time, I would suggest you give it plenty of time to download everything you possibly can onto the circle of concern. You then draw another circle around it, on the outside of it, give yourself a bit of space. And within that circle, you write everything that you can influence that relates to the things that are in the circle of concern. Or maybe they're just separate things, but you think about everything that you can influence in terms of including how you might handle yourself in those situations. And when you're wanting to have a proactive movement forward of the things that you're going to work on, think about those things that you can influence and occupy your mind, going back to the choice and responsibility, occupy your mind with those things. Because the things that you're concerned about that don't sit in your circle of influence are not the things that you can really make a difference in. Okay, so gratitude, acceptance. Third thing, compassion and altruism. If we do something for somebody else, if we smile at somebody, if we pick up something that they've dropped, if we give somebody directions, if we help somebody out, to whatever degree, it does us good. It makes us feel good. It fosters happiness. It makes the world a better place. What's not to love about that? So compassion and altruism, also fundamental in terms of having a positive mindset, having having mental health and well-being. Our language, I mean, this is a huge topic. It's one I've run coaching programs on. It's things I talk to clients about. The power of our language. I think I even talk about this in other sessions. How we talk about ourselves, how we refer to ourselves, being compassionate to ourselves, talk about what we want rather than what we don't want, what we can influence rather than what we can't influence, and how we speak about ourselves and our experience of life every day is fundamental. It's in so many different contexts. So checking in on our language, checking in, we all like to be sort of slightly self-effactive. Well, I'm not very good at that, or being modest. That's fine. And the opposite of it, of saying I'm great about everything, is also not particularly attractive to anybody. But actually being honest and being compassionate to ourselves about what we're good at and being kind to ourselves is very important. And then the final thing to talk about is suffering and how we view suffering. The Buddhists have a really eloquent way of framing suffering. There's two things you can see on the slide here. One of them is they talk about the river of life flows between the banks of pleasure and pain, meaning that suffering is inevitable. We're going to have suffering in life, and it comes back to that word of acceptance. And the other perspective that they have is that in the context of us experiencing something in life, it's like there are two darts. The first dart is the thing that happened to us. It's the challenging situation. It's the unpleasant feedback. It's the bad news. That's the first bit of suffering. That's the first dart. And then the second dart is how we deal with it, how we internalize it, how we choose to act. Because then we have an element of control, because that second dart, that second component of suffering, our response to the situation, going back to talking about concern and influence, the elements around which we can influence are fundamental in helping us to deal with that situation. And the other perspective, again, is to remember that everything is temporary. The good stuff that happens in life is temporary. The bad stuff that happens in life is temporary. So I hope all of those points are useful in terms of, as I call, my nutrients for positive health and well-being in relation to what I've been talking about. And as I said at the very beginning of that list of points, is that how we spend time in our heads involves a choice and involves taking responsibility. And there's this wonderful parable about an old man and a young boy, and it's one I've shared before, but it's certainly one I think is worth holding on to and remembering. So an wise old man was talking with a young boy and said, "There are two wolves always fighting inside me. One is filled with anger, fear, jealousy, arrogance, shame, and lies. The other wolf is filled with love, compassion, happiness, gratitude, truth, peace. And the battle rages inside of you and all men." And the boy stopped and thought for a moment and asked, "Which wolf will win?" The old man answered, "The one you feed." So choice and responsibility. Feed the wolf that's got the compassion, the happiness, the gratitude, the acceptance. That's a word that's not in there, the truth and the peace, because that will definitely help foster good health and well-being. Okay, so as I always like to do, I've got a bit of homework to give you if you're willing to do it. I can't check up on you like I can with my clients who I deal with and work with from week to week, month to month. But this is up to you, personal responsibility. So what I was going to suggest, 4 things. Number 1, have a review of your daily, weekly exercise, nutrition, and hydration schedule. Set standards for what you want to achieve. Plan, execute. Doing that, having a plan for healthy eating, exercise, hydration, and achieving it actually will help to foster, feeling good about ourselves. Second thing, punctuate your day with a minimum of 2 periods of pause and meditation, mindfulness, just to be, even if it's just 5 minutes sitting on a bench somewhere, listening to the birds, looking at the trees, watching what's going on around you. Just have some time to be twice a day, to come down to base, to reset. Third thing, at the end of the day, just audit which wolf, if you've had both wolves going on, which wolf have you fed today in percentage terms? And pick a moment you recall when you fed the less positive and negative wolves, and ask yourself, if I were to take responsibility for finding something positive here, how would I view this situation? So as much as there may have been some negative wolf stuff going in, what's the positive counter to that? And note that down in your journal, which is the first thing. The last thing, your growth journal. Absolutely encourage you to do it as a reflection piece on your journey. If you're watching these videos, hoping that might be that's because you're interested in the subject matter, in your own growth and development. Keep a journal of it. Keep a journal just of your learning. Right, that is it. Thank you again for listening and watching. As I did on the last video, here's my contact details. If you've got any questions, feel free to get in touch, either WhatsApp or perhaps easy just to email me. And the website about what we do at Leading Revitality is there also for you to check out if you so wish. And if I can be of any help, please do, and look forward to speaking with you or sharing some thoughts with you next time round. All the best.